Abhichandani. So, I think we are unable to catch hold of Dr. Daria, who was supposed to be physically present. And so we are just a change of the series of lectures. And now we have a very good, renowned local speaker from Ahmedabad, Dr. V.K. Abhichandani, and he is going to highlight in us on about hyperuricemia and diabetes. As far as Dr. Abhichandani is concerned, he doesn't need any introduction, especially in the western part of India. But as RSSDI is a national conference, let me introduce you. He has MD and a postgraduate diploma in medical engineering from medical endocrinology from UK, diabetes and endocrine physician since January 1985 at Ahmedabad. He has been a principal investigator in many phase 3 trials, member of American Association of Clinical Endocrinology, ESI, and EASD. He has been a life member of various associations, and he has been a guest speaker at both national and international conferences. He has written several topics in various diabetic books, and he has recently published innumerable articles. Over to Dr. Abhichandani, please.
Thank you very much, both esteemed chairpersons and all honorable colleagues. Over next 20 minutes, am I audible clearly? Over next 20 minutes, I am going to cover this topic of type 2 diabetes and hyperuricemia that has been allotted to me by the RSSDI body. So the association between uric acid on one side and systemic hypertension, dyslipidemia, glucose intolerance, overweight, fatty liver, renal disease, and cardiovascular disease on the other side is well recognized. However, the causal relationship between uric acid and these different clinical problems is still not firmly established. Hyperuricemia has been attributed to hyperinsulinemia in metabolic syndrome and to decrease uric acid excretion in kidney dysfunction, and is now being acknowledged as an important mediator of metabolic syndrome, renal disease, and CVD development. All of us would agree that we unanimously accept the association between uric acid and nephrolithiasis or preeclampsia. Uric acid is a weak acid with a molecular weight of 168 produced in the liver, muscles, and intestines. Exogenous sources that can increase serum uric acid include fatty meal, organ meat, and seafood. So fructose remains another rich source of exogenous source of uric acid. Fructose is present in fruits and added sugar, and it undergoes phosphorylation with the help of fructokinase enzyme, and in the process ATP is consumed, AMP is generated, which under the effect of AMP deaminase enzyme gets converted into uric acid. There have been sex differences in urate handling noted, and this is a 2020 paper, and the authors have very elegantly highlighted that males tend to have higher serum urate levels and therefore have an increased risk of associated comorbidities like gout, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, CVD, hypertension, kidney stones, and chronic kidney disease. Compared to males, females are better off. Intracellular uric acid acts as a pro-oxidant agent, and you will find this common denominator in subsequent slides, that is excess activity of NADPH oxidase. NADPH is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, which generates lot of ROS, reactive oxygen species, which in turn leads to ATP depletion and mitochondrial injury. Intracellular uric acid seems to be the major culprit. Increase in intracellular levels of uric acid lead to decrease in nitric oxide synthase enzyme activity, resulting in less NO production, which in turn results in decreased flow-mediated dilatation, vasoconstriction, aggravated insulin resistance. All this can result in hypertension. And there is a different mechanism by which elevated uric acid also contributes to development of hypertension. That is to the right side of the cartoon. And it just depresses the activity of epithelial sodium channels, which in turn prevents sodium excretion, in fact leads to sodium retention and hypertension. And this is a sort of a repetition, but with greater details of the way vascular injury occurs due to elevated uric acid. So the common denominator is again here, NADPH oxidase, increased ROS. There is mitochondrial injury, activation of RAS system, increased senescence and apoptosis, increased ATP depletion, which will lead to more AMP formation, and it will contribute to further uric acid levels. And then we have the last important modality of damage, which is platelet-derived growth factor receptor beta phosphorylation. So all these lead to unhealthy vascular health, generalized vascular endothelial dysfunction. Intracellular uric acid has also been implicated in the process of gluconeogenesis. So this is a very elegant trial, and it was reported in 2012 in American Journal of Epidemiology by E. Krishnan and colleagues. And they followed up young adults with hyperuricemia for a period of 15 years. And out of this cohort of 5012 young adults, what was noted was that there was no change in serum insulin, despite some of them progressing to pre-diabetes and diabetes. And this itself is an indicator that hyperuricemia is an independent risk factor for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Now, coming specifically to insulin resistance and diabetes, how does elevated serum uric acid levels contribute or lead to this process? So basically, elevated serum uric acid induces insulin resistance in the liver by causing mitochondrial and endoplasmic reticular stress and steatosis. So basically, there is an imbalance of AMPD, which is explained here, monophosphate dehydrogenase. It is increased and activity of AMPK is diminished. This leads to greater lipogenesis and low lipogenolysis, leading to fat accumulation and NAFLD. So when this uric acid pours into the circulation, it causes generalized NO deficiency and endothelial dysfunction, inflammation in the adipocytes with reduction of adiponectin, both of them leading to insulin resistance. And at the pancreatic islet level, elevated uric acid confers local oxidative stress and leads to islet dysfunction and insulin deficiency. Uric acid has also been implicated as a mediator of diabetic nephropathy. We have seen the endothelial dysfunction due to NO depletion, inflammation, where markers like NF-κB, CRP, MCP1. MCP1 is macrophage chemoattractant protein 1. All of them will be elevated. There will be undue RAS activation. And importantly, there will be increase in EMT, which is epithelium mesenchyme transition, which will lead to a lot of extracellular matrix production and deposition, leading to microvascular disease and perpetuation of progressive diabetic nephropathy. So this is a sort of a snapshot of what we have seen so far. Elevated uric acid leads to inflammation, which is reflected by elevated levels of TNF-alpha, NF-kappa beta, CRP, interleukin 6. There is excess ROS formation resulting from oxidative stress, endothelial dysfunction emanating from reduced nitric oxide production, and uric acid directly interferes with insulin signaling pathway at receptor level through ENPP1 recruitment. Now, this ENPP1 is basically a transmembrane glycoprotein ectonucleotide pyrophosphate phosphodiesterase 1. It inhibits insulin receptor signaling and has been recently found to be a key player in development of insulin resistance. And when elevated uric acid levels are noted, they probably also complement hyperglycemia-induced polyol pathways, and in this manner contribute to microvascular damage in the diabetic population. Now, we all agree that diabetes and cardiovascular disease are inseparable twins. So this is a slide which looks at um, how high uric acid promotes the occurrence and development of CVD. High UA basically regulates numerous molecular signals such as inflammation, oxidative stress, insulin resistance, and endothelial dysfunction, and thus affects the progression and prognosis of cardiovascular disease, including there are four boxes in this cartoon. Starting from A, hypertension, you have the reference and the causative proposed mechanisms. Then it also is involved in atherosclerosis through node-like receptor protein 3 inflammasome activation and a string of complex chemical reactions. Then atrial fibrillation has also been found to be associated with high uric acid, and this is thanks to the voltage dependent K1.5 potassium channels which get overexpressed. And lastly, heart failure has also been thought to be sometimes happening due to high uric acid levels. So now we will look at approaching the end of my presentation, last few slides. We'll look at commonly used drugs which can increase serum uric acid levels. They include diuretics, both loop and thiazide type, and antitubercular medicines like pyrazinamide and ethambutol, low dose of aspirin, less than 325 milligram, immunosuppressant drugs like cyclosporin and tacrolimus, nicotinic acid, cancer chemotherapy leading to tumor lysis syndrome and outpouring of uric acid into the circulation. Levodopa has been incriminated. And then when undue, almost experimental doses of testosterone replacement therapy are offered to the patient, this can sometimes result in elevation of serum uric acid levels. Now we look at some non-pharmacological approaches to asymptomatic hyperuricemia. And this we are talking about asymptomatic hyperuricemia, typically found in many of our type 2 diabetes persons, as very aptly highlighted by my honorable chairperson, Dr. Rangwala, that NASH is very common. Similarly, high uric acid levels are also quite commonly encountered in type 2 diabetes population. So what would be the harmful behavior? So consuming lot of animal protein like red meat, organ meat, for example, liver, shellfish and seafood, beer and liquor in excess, sweetened soft drinks, juices, fructose and table sugar will all be harmful. Sudden weight loss, one is pathological or purposefully attained, may invite elevations of uric acid. And dehydration and extremely vigorous exercise in short spells, unaccustomed exercise, can lead to high uric acid levels. So what would be the beneficial part if we consume coffee, caffeinated drinks in moderation, cherries would be good, vitamin C is good, gradual weight reduction, and regular exercise in moderation. Where do we not impose any restriction? We will not like to restrict vegetable protein intake like peas, lentils, spinach, beans, mushroom, asparagus, and wherever it is available, red wine in small judicious quantities, that is permitted. I found this very useful algorithm. It has been from a 2020 paper, all Indian authors and co-authored by the legendary Dr. A.K. Singh, endocrinologist from Kolkata. And it really gives us a good guidance. Asymptomatic hyperuricemia is considered to be any uric acid level more than 6.8. The patient is not complaining of anything. So first is non-pharmacological therapy, dietary restrictions, moderate exercise and weight reduction, avoiding or modifying drugs which can cause hyperuricemia. I already referred to this. And if the serum uric acid hovers between 6.8 to 8.9, If the renal function is normal, leave the person alone, just lifestyle and diet. If there is a evidence of CKD stage 3 or 4, means anything EGFR below 60 up to 15, or with concurrent renal stones, then we have to select that candidate for urate lowering therapy. And if serum uric acid is more than 9 or 9 or more than 9, then the patient deserves whether he is symptomatic or not. So what are the most common drugs used for management of hyperuricemia? They include uricostatic agents like allopurinol, oxypurinol, febuxostat, which reduce the production of uric acid through competitive inhibition of xanthine oxidase. And uricosuric agents like probenecid, benzbromeron, which is not a FDA approved product, and the most recent lesinurad, which has not come to India so far, which favor urinary excretion of UA, modulating the resorption of urate in the renal tubules. Now, I will like to share with all august colleagues a list of cardiometabolic drugs with urate lowering properties. So, this is a blessing in disguise when we select such products for our hypertensive or diabetic population. I think we offer them extra benefits. So, oral antidiabetics, specifically SGLT2 inhibitors, canagliflozin in particular, metformin is the second one, blessed with these uricosuric properties. Statins and phenofibrates, appetite suppressants like orlistat, antiplatelets. Now this is aspirin in a different role, दूसरे अवतार में, in a very high doses, will try to push back urate levels. And antihypertensive, like two I would specifically mention, losartan and CCBs like amlodipine. So coming to almost the final analysis of my talk, fructose is available in plenty from sugar and high fructose corn syrup, honey, fruits. So when consumed continuously in larger quantities, it is going to be deleterious. So fructose, unlike other sugars, is directly metabolized in the liver, where it increases liver fat, raises triglyceride level, and increases UA when consumed chronically. So at the brain level, fructose will activate test centers, make the appetite more strong, and induce addicting behavior, induce leptin resistance, will prove to be a neurostimulant. In the liver, it can create fatty liver, elevated triglyceride, ATP depletion, which will in turn generate more uric acid and cause inflammation, steatosis. Vasculature is plagued with inflammation and endothelial dysfunction. In the kidneys, there is renal vasoconstriction, glomerular hypertension, renal injury, and renal inflammation, and sometimes fibrosis also. And at the adipocyte level, lot of oxidative stress is incurred, resulting in inflammation and reduction of adiponectin production. So all these lead to metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. Now, summarizing my talk, uric acid is a real risk factor for the development of metabolic, renal, and CVDs, including strokes. The intracellular UA seems to be more pathogenic. Both hyperuricemia and prediabetes are associated with purine-rich food, and patients need to be advised on appropriate diet. The prevalence of hyperuricemia is common among patients with obesity, a long duration of diabetes, increased diastolic blood pressure, and excess alcohol consumption. And hence, there is a need to raise awareness of lifestyle modification, healthy behavior, and early diagnosis of hyperuricemia in persons with type 2 diabetes. Thank you very much for your patience here.